All right, everybody, it's the top of the hour. We're going to get started. Thanks to everybody for joining us on this beautiful Thursday. I hope it's as beautiful where you are as it is in Lexington, Kentucky. Oh, I see Austin, Texas. That's awesome. Cincinnati. Hi, Mike. Good to see you. So really excited for this webinar today. We've got our two product leads on the call today, Gary Deesh, Chief Product Officer at VividCharts, and Stephen Schwab, our Director of Product Experience. We've been working on this app kind of in the shadows for a few months. We're really excited. It got launched a couple weeks ago. It's live on the ServiceNow store and it is free. And so not to be confusing, but it's called VividSheets, VividSheets by VividCharts. I believe if you search VividCharts in the store, it will still come up. Excited for these guys to explain everything we're doing with this product to you today. It's a spreadsheet-like UI that's going to be able to query things in your instance that previously you've been unable to do without some pretty technical assets helping you. So like I said, free to download on the App Store today, no obligation. Definitely go do that and check it out after the call. Let us know how you like it. We're still looking for feedback as it's only been live for a couple weeks. This is also a great way to augment our core product. It's a great way to pre-process data that then you want to visualize in a product like VividCharts. But you can use this without having VividCharts. Sometimes all you need is that result, that calculation, and you don't actually need to visualize it. So don't feel like there's any other dependencies. It's something you can use all on its own. And just as a reminder, like I said before, we've got that comment section on the right-hand side. So certainly if you have questions as we go along, make sure you drop them there and we're going to answer them all at the end. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Gary and Stephen. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Ashley. So today, Stephen and I are going to take you on this journey. We are going to go into a lot of the specifics about VividSheets, what it is, what it does, but we also want to tell a little bit of a story of where we were, what led us to VividSheets, and then also at the end, we're going to try to inspire you and talk about a little bit about what's coming up next. So let's take a quick look at the agenda. So I'll try to stick to these timeframes, and we'll try to leave a bunch of time at the end for questions if we had. Please feel free to ask questions throughout, though, and we'll address them as we can. So we're going to talk a little bit about VividCharts because I think it just gives context to how VividSheets became a thing, problems that customers experienced, and that we were helping customers with that inspired us to get to VividSheets. Going to go through a demo of VividSheets. So we take you through kind of a building step of 4 different examples of how to use VividSheets, how it works. It's been a bunch of our time on that. Then we're going to talk about what's coming up in the next couple weeks. So we're working really hard on progressing this thing forward. And so we're going to share our short-term roadmap and give you some inspiration at the end to try to help your imagination think about what's possible. Okay, so what is VividCharts? I actually kind of mentioned this, but we have a product called VividCharts. It's also our company name. It's our primary product. And at VividCharts, we talk a lot about automated operational reporting and AOR. And specifically, the place that we help our customers with is with their operational reporting and helping them automate that. And people often ask us, what's the difference between operational reporting and analytics? We actually have a really great talk that our founders did back in our October online conference, go deep into what AR is. So I would encourage you to go check that out. When I talk to people about this, I always say AR is like when you have a story to tell and you need to do a status discussion on how you're performing as it sits today. Like, how are we performing today against metrics that we're trying to measure against? Analytics is a little bit different. Analytics is sometimes a story, but it's also a discovery process. And so you might be digging. The analogy or that I always use is, where AOR is telling a story and a narrative, the analytics is a little bit more of choose your own adventure usually. And so I'll kind of leave it at that, but AOR is where we fit and help our customers at. Now, when we're trying to help customers with AOR, we see that the three pillars of value that we provide to customers is in data, design, and delivery. Now, I think if you've been familiar with VividCharts in the past, you've probably been come across the design elements that we have. We're really known for our chart library and the visual components that we can help customers get that potentially they have struggles finding solutions for in other places. It's just one of the things that we've been known for. Now, data is always a part of that. And so, obviously we get data from ServiceNow, we query data, we feed it into the charts. But data, is one of the pillars that we talk about often. It is one of the things that led us to VividSheets, and we'll tell you a little bit more about that also. Now, the other pillar here is delivery. We'll probably not talk too much about that today. It will be part of this, but data design and delivery are the three areas and the pillars that we always kind of use as a framework for discussing how that we're providing value to our customers. Again, just to kind of shout out, Rob Walsh, one of our co-founders, did a presentation again in that online conference last October that you can find. Okay, so let's talk about the data and the design solutions that we've had. If you've been exposed to the VividCharts product, you'll know that we have a slide deck kind of canvas editor and, very familiar feeling for that. But some of the pieces of that product that allow you to work on the design element of your charts is, our chart library. It's very extensive. We have some pretty unique charts in there. And we have what we call chart templates. And chart templates allow you to not only put data to a chart and make it a template that's reusable, but you actually get to save the design and styling of that chart. So if you have someone at your organization that's going to create a chart that could be used over and over again, you can save that and keep those design elements, the branding elements, and the data elements associated with that chart template. So those are both kind of data and design in the chart library and chart templates. One of the things that we have come to us pretty often with customers is, we have all this data in ServiceNow. We need to do some manipulation. Like we need to mold and shape the data so that it's in the format that we want to visualize with the chart library or chart templates. And so the VCDCS is a way for scripts to be used in order to do the data collection. It's a little bit more of a coding kind of developer experience, but it is a way for people to get that data shaped. And then kind of the last one is one of our newer ones. We've had it out for, months now, but it's our specialized chart. And in specialized charts, it allows us to help customers who have pretty unique and specialized requirements, but it allows us to do both the data and a very specialized visual piece of that. And so these are all things that we've done to help people fit into the data and the design pillars and provide more value to them. But we still had questions. We wanted to make it potentially easier. And so that was where we were when we started brainstorming about what could possibly be next.
Yeah, so now's the time where we get to jump right into the meat of VividSheets. However, like Gary said, we also think it's important when we talk about solutions to also kind of share context around the problems that we've heard from customers, because we always like building with customers and hearing from their experience. And that really what leads our development of these things. So going into that, there are a couple specific challenges that we hear fairly often. And there are these things here. One is multiple tables when you're trying to draw things and kind of get data together that reference multiple tables. It's not all that easy to do that and represent it in a single chart. There is a way, database views are a nice way to handle that. We've heard that often feels like kind of a heavy-handed solution to make something that is, can seem conceptually relatively simple. And then same with simple calculations. I heard someone, one of our customers the other week say, I just want to make this simple calculation. I thought about kicking it over to the BI team, but it's just that feels, again, kind of heavy-handed. And same thing, there is a mechanism to do that. Could do something like, a database view or a custom table or a calculated field. But jumping over to this third block here, not everybody always has either awareness of that mechanism or the ability to create those things in the system. And so what we were really interested in and what drew us to this concept of VividSheets was really this idea of making those things more accessible and providing a tool that more people could access kind of naturally and that they felt really comfortable in. And so this is where we landed, the VividSheets solution. This is kind of a high level thing before we go into a demo, but again, touching on the high points of where we find this valuable. It's an interface that users generally find familiar. It's largely a sheet-like interface. If people are used to working in those tools, this should feel pretty comfortable. Aggregations with special functions means it's all there and it doesn't require scripting. So another hurdle that we can kind of avoid, think of if somebody is on a project team and they just need to do something about, how they're tracking against their project. They might not have the scripting skills necessary to go set up that database view or, make a new table in a calculated field. So hopefully this will make it more accessible. And it is directly in your ServiceNow instance. So again, there's no need to manage external data pipelines and all that goes into that. You can do custom metrics and calculations, should be pretty simple. And another thing that we think is really valuable is that all of this can be packed into the same space. So if you think about somebody who is going to manage these metrics and have them set up in this way, it's all on a single view. So you don't have to go to all of these different places to go and manage that and see how things are both written and how they're updating. The last one here really quickly is to use these values to stage this data across the platform. And we'll show some of those moving forward.
Okay.
So yeah, Gary, take us away.
Let's get into the demo. So let me tell you what I'm going to demo. So I'm going to show you Vivid functions, what they are and how they work. I'm going to talk about how you can create functions using referenced cells. Again, if you're used to a spreadsheet-like experience, it'll feel familiar, and I'll show you the power of using that. How to build some metrics. We'll use some calculations, and then we're going to solve the multi-table problem. So let me go into the first example. Okay, so what I've done here is this is a sheet that I've already pre-built. So maybe I can step back out. So when you go into VividSheets, this is what you're going to see. And then in this case, I'll let people explore a little bit, but in this case, I have some sheets built. I can look at sheets that have been shared with me, or I can go create my own sheet because I have the permission to do that. In this case, I'm going to go into a sheet that I have built. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is go through the Vivid functions and the power that they offer us in order to get values and aggregates into our sheet. So the very first thing that we have tried to do with VividSheets is provide a lot of help to users so that you can be successful early on without needing a ton of help. One of the things that we've done to do that is if you go into a cell, and I can navigate just like I would anywhere else, but if I'm in a cell and I go up into the function bar and hit the equal sign, I get this helper text. This helper text shows all the functions available to me. So we have both the Vivid functions, which we'll go through, but I also have some mathematical functions here also. And then I can select one. So like Vivid count would be that. And then we provide some additional help. So it gives me the information that this function needs. So in this case, it needs the ServiceNow table and the encoded query. So what does that look like? Let's go look at VividCount. So in this case, I've already kind of pre-configured the function with some information. Again, when you saw that helper, it said the first thing that needs to be added in there, first parameter, is the table. So in this case, I'm saying I want to count with the VividCount from the incident table. And then the second thing we need is an encoded query. So encoded queries, if you've used like lists in ServiceNow, when you're using the condition builder, the output of that is an encoded query. Let me show you a place, because I think, this is where questions could come, is like, how do we get the encoded query? One way that you could do that, I have a problem table pulled up here. So if I'm in, just my ServiceNow instance, I got the problem table pulled up. In this case, I have, some filters already assigned here. So I have active as true, opened, between a certain date. When I run that, I get this, you've probably seen these breadcrumbs if you've ever done this in ServiceNow. If I do a right click on top of the ending point or the last piece of that breadcrumb and hit copy query, that would be your encoded query. So that would be one way to get it. I could come back into my sheet, and just to show you, I can, paste that, and it shows what that encoded query looks like. We're going to go through some, more discussion on encoded queries, but I just wanted to show you one possible way to get that. Now, I do know that, maybe if you've never used the condition builder in ServiceNow, maybe even that is feeling a little difficult or maybe outside. One thing I'll point out is if you go into our documentation here, which we have the link right inside the sheet, which is pretty handy. You go into our documentation in VividSheets. One thing that we do have is we have some tutorials that will help you, but we also have some coded or common encoded query components. So you could go here, and then you can see, if you want last 30 days, and we're starting to build out this library for you. And this one here at the end is one that I'll use here in a future example. But in this case, you could come see which component you actually wanted, and you could copy and paste this into your sheet just that easily.
Gary, one other thing I want to be able to show here, because I do think it reinforces, right, like you were saying, this idea that we provide as much context and help as we can throughout this product. If you go here and then click into the function bar and hit enter and just select one of these again, there's a little button here that says learn more under each of these functions that brings this up and gives a little bit more detail that you can leave up while you're working. So for instance, we even have an example of something you could use here similar to what Gary just showed, what you just showed in the documentation.
Yeah, and even one step further, again, we always, get people into our documentation and knowledge help to help people. Trying to help people as much as we can, be successful, trying to get the value out of the functions that they're trying to get. So let's look at, I'm going to go through a couple of these, and I think you'll get the pattern, but let's go through a couple of these and explain them one by one. So in this case, again, I got VividCount, which gives me a count. Oh, one thing that is also true is if you go here, it shows you what the function does. So this is giving me a count of the ServiceNow records based on the conditions. So in this case, if I go click on this, on the incident table, I got 93 records is what it's returning to me, where active is true, and it was opened at after the first of the year, essentially. And that date just shows the last second of 2023. So anything greater than that is going to come here. So I have 93 incidents that were opened this year is what this is saying. Now, one of the questions I always had was like, what if I have this in here and I've tried something, but the values actually don't work? It's nice that this works and you can see an example that works, but what if I made a mistake with the encoded query? What's going to happen? Is it just going to break on me? And another thing that we've done a lot of, I'll just kind of throw that in there and hit enter. So one thing we've done a lot of is we're trying to be really helpful and explicit when you do have an error telling you what's wrong. So again, in this case, it's saying, hey, that table that I was trying to do doesn't exist. Trying to be very clear with the user on what is going on. But we do know that the incident table exists. Going to hit enter, and now you're going to see something else that's new. You're going to see this awaiting collection message. So again, we don't want to run a bunch of queries that are not formatted right or done well. So what we do before we even run the query is we check to make sure that it's a valid query for the user. And in this case, because it says awaiting collection, it means that everything is that it needs in order to run the query is there. And it's upon me to take the next step to go actually run the query. That next step is up here in the right-hand corner where it says collect data. So I can hit collect data. It runs all the queries that I've set up in order to get those values. Okay. So this one, Vivid Count, may be, one of the more common and familiar things for people. I just want to count of the records. But what if I wanted to do a summation of some values in a certain field on all set of records? So we have Vivid Sum for that. And when you look at this, you're going to see a pattern here, which is new to Vivid Sum, but is used for the rest of the functions. And it takes 3 parameters instead of 2. I'll go down here. I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to hit Vivid Sum so we can see it. So Vivid Sum takes a table, it takes the encoded query, and then it actually takes the field. And that field, if I click Learn More, we can see that field is the name of the field on the table that I've identified that we're going to use to perform the sum in this case. And so let's go look at the example I have. We see that we get 279. What I have in here is I have the incident table. We have this same, I try to keep things consistent so we can see the pattern. We have active is true and, after the first of the year, and then the value or the field that I wanted to sum up is impact. And so what it's doing is it's taking all 93 of those records and it's going and finding the impact value for each record and then adding those up. I won't go through the others because I think you kind of get the pattern, meaning you get table, encoded query, or the others you get table, encoded query, and then the field. Average, max, min, and Vivid Count distinct are all kind of similar experiences with the same parameters. Now, if we move over here, we have some calculations or math that we can do. And so, again, just like everything else, we provide the information for you, but multiply takes 2 values. In this case, I've given it references to cells. So I said, multiply cell B2, which is 93, by B4, which is 3, and we get 279. I summed up all the values of the impact field. So 93 plus the average of the 3, or the values, equals 279. So I shouldn't be surprised to get 279 when I actually do calculations on that. Again, I'll let people kind of discover how these different math calculations work. They all follow a similar pattern. I will point out that are some of these like divide. So if we go here, we'll say divide. We'll hit learn more. Some of these values like divide take 2 parameters, where sum of them, like some, you can add many cells. It doesn't take just one parameter. I'm going to stop right there really quick just to get any questions, Stephen, that you may think I should address before I move on, or if we're good to go.
I think we're good to go. I think one thing just to call out additionally is that up in the top right there, you can see when the data was last collected. So hopefully that is your, if you think about, you make this sheet and you have to come back to it maybe to report something monthly. This is always the readout of the data as of when it was last collected.
Yeah, very good call out. We'll see the value of that here in a second when we start building some actual tables with the data. So let's go into the next example. So what I shared in the previous one was just the basic structure and syntax. Again, if you go to the knowledge base, we have a lot of syntax help there. What I've done here is I wanted to just build upon that and show, okay, sometimes I don't want to just type everything into the encoded query. Sometimes I actually want to put in variables essentially into a cell and build my query based on some different variables. So in this case, I have vivid count again. As you remember, it took the table. And here we have, if you used a sheet using Excel or Google Sheets or any kind of sheet-like experience, this is going to feel very familiar. I said it's in cell E2 and I want to keep it absolute there. It always be E2. And so incident table. So very same thing I did in the last Vivid count where I use the incident table. I just happen to have it as a reference here. And we'll see where putting these in as variables gets pretty powerful in the next two examples. So the second piece I did here is I created this encoded query by stringing together and appending together different values. So in that case, or in this case, I still have the same information where I wanted active as true, and then I wanted opened in this year is what I used here. But I put them in different cells, and if we go back and look, I have those appended together. Now there is a little bit of syntax here, so when I append things together, I use this caret, which is ServiceNow's kind of append together syntax. And then for us, in order to reference those together and append them together, we put them inside of backticks and have these brackets. Again, I don't want to go too much into the syntax. We have a lot of help and articles in the knowledge base to help you work and learn how this functions if you need more help. But again, I get 93, which is what you saw when I typed just directly into the cell last time, these values. Okay. Anything there, Stephen, before I move on to the table examples?
Yeah, can you maybe talk about why it would be advantageous to set it up this way like you've done as opposed to just typing everything into the function bar? Because you could do that, but yeah, is there a special reason why setting up like this is valuable?
Yeah, this will become incredibly obvious in the next example I have, but in this example, I have incident as the table, but what if, someone asked me, that was nice, but could you just tell me what the problem is? Like on the problem table. So again, it's a variable at that point. And so I can change that variable in my table, and then my function is going to pull in that variable. You can see it's a waiting collection. If I go collect the data, you can see we actually have 108 problems that were created this year that are active. So again, it'll become even more obvious in this next example, but having these things as variables makes it very easy for me to start building kind of robust dynamic metrics where I don't have to, like if I wanted to change, for example, the table, I wouldn't have to go change every cell, which gets pretty tedious. I can do it in one place.
And likewise, if you wanted to do that in ServiceNow, you'd have to go and navigate to the different page and restart your query and do all of that. So this could be, is that fair to say this is like setting it up like this could be a nice way to handle ad hoc requests too.
Yeah, for sure. Like if you're used to getting kind of ad hoc requests for different metrics, that people are, just saying, hey, give me this metric or KPI from this table, with these dates. If you have to go into the list chart and do that, if you don't have that already set up as some sort of report, that could take a little bit. When you set it up like this, you'll see it's probably like 2 or 3 seconds of work. Okay, let's move on to the next example. So here is where we start solving some of the problems that Stephen identified earlier when we were talking about where we still needed to go. So as you might guess, over here on the right side is kind of some of that staging stuff, like I just shared it, putting in variables that I want to use in order to create the values I want to get from my functions and the math that I do. In this case, it's a pretty simple table, but I will say it's kind of difficult to get if you want to visualize this data inside of a single chart or a single kind of report. But with VividSheets, it's not that difficult anymore. So let me kind of explain what we got here. So again, I just got something fairly simple. I'm getting open tickets for the month of January, February, March. I'm getting closed tickets for January, February, March. I need to, because we have a KPI over here. So one of our metrics that we're being held accountable for is that we want, in this kind of demonstration, we want 80% of our open tickets closed every month. That's kind of our metric that we're holding ourselves accountable to. And so I have that 80% value here. Well, in order to compare how I'm doing to this, I need to be able to calculate this percentage, in which I take the closed divided by the open each month to see what percentage are getting closed. So let's walk through this a little bit more detail. Okay, so in this one, I'm saying I want a count of the tickets. This is using the problem table. We can see it's J1. It's always going to be the problem table. And then J3 is saying, okay, let's see, J3 is opened. And if we go here, we can see it's K3. So another nice thing about using reference cells is I can copy and paste cell to cell and not have to rewrite queries. I'll demonstrate that, I think, in the next example to really highlight how that works. But in this case, this between date thing is one that we see and use so much. It is one of the examples we put in our knowledge base. So what I did is I just copied and pasted that piece of this encoded query, and then I went and filled in the spaces where the variables were with the actual values for the cells that they are here. And so what this is doing is just getting, January 1st through the 31st, April 1st through, or February 1st through February 29th, etc. Once I have those values, I can come in here. It's actually not a hard calculation, but again, it's difficult to do without the Sheets Sheets tool for us. We're just dividing, the closed problems in January with the opened. And so we can show that 41% of our opened tickets got closed this year or this month.
Yeah, I'm excited about that one because that one is kind of, we've heard people say, yeah, just getting a percentage of something seems like it should be super simple, but the heavy-handed approach of doing a new table or a new field value with calculated, it's not always the best or not always the most preferable.
Yeah, we're going to finish, again, we're talking about the data pillar. And so you always have to think about data design and delivery. And so getting the data, okay, so we're getting that here, but then we will tell the rest of the story here in a bit, but you always have to think about, okay, how are we designing with this? Like, where does this data go? Is it going to be okay to share this table? Maybe it is. Does it need to go somewhere else so it looks better, doesn't need to go into a chart. Those are things that you need to think about. But now that we have these values calculated, we have the data we need to go visualize it. That's kind of, one of the amazing steps here. And what's nice here is, we can see, okay, we have that value. 41%, we know that 80% is the metric we're trying to go across. So now I can do the same thing. I can say, okay, take the metric that we achieved versus what we're trying to achieve and just give me, the percentage of that. And so we only hit 51% of our KPI for January. And you can see that by March, we had scaled up and we're doing better. So think back to the problems we were talking about. Doing math and calculations, and then getting over and trying to do multiple tables is another thing that we were trying to solve. So that's the next example I'm going to do. But before I do that, is there any questions or any additional thoughts, Stephen?
I think the only observation here, which is pretty cool, is that you're still setting it up to kind of use it as a variable. So again, you could think how that would want to change, and then all of your calculations happen with the click of a button. That's pretty exciting.
Yep. Or, dates are just variables. And, so I could change out dates, or KPI is a variable. So maybe we decide we need to do better and we change that to 90%. Let's just do that. We do 90% and we can see right away,
everything updates.
Everything updates. And now I can take that to visualize it how I need to somewhere.
Cool. This also could be the story. See the very left, you have the year. I could also imagine that you have this set up for, like, maybe you come in here and every month and get your updated values.
Yeah. Let's look at the next example, because I think we're going to hit that one home here in the next example. So let's solve the multiple tables question. Now, this example is illustrative of what's possible. Maybe not the best example, but I think most people are aware that we have, an incident table, we have a problem table, and a change request table. And so I just wanted to demonstrate that we can get values from any table, pull them in here, and then start to stage data that we can use for other purposes. So in this case, I created a very similar table where it's January, February, and March. You can see my dates over here are constructed very similar. In this case, though, I have tables. So I have incident, problem, and change request tables here. And so when we go over here, we can see that, I'm referencing the incident table. I have that same value for kind of dates between that I shared in the last one. And then I get the problem table, and then we get the change request table. So now I've taken aggregate counts of, records I have based on the parameters I gave it through the encoded query from 3 different tables and put it into, a single table here. And you can think of all the different types of cases that you might have where, again, I think you were talking about, database views can be a very realistic solution if you have something that is kind of a bigger ask and, requires a need for that. But sometimes it doesn't. And this is, one solution of that. Now, one thing I want to do and kind of hit home. So like I said, because you've asked a couple of times, like, what's the value of having this stuff as variables? And one thing that I can do is, just do a Command C, move down, and I'll do a Command V. Oh, I see that I have an error here, which is nice. It says the string template includes empty cell reference. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And if we do that, we can see it says H2 and then H11. So it does have empty values here. So I'm going to hit enter, leave that there. maybe I just want to get April here. So I'm going to say, April 1st is our start date, and April 30th is our end date. I'm going to hit enter. Now I have a valid query, and we hit collect. We haven't hit April in 2024, so that makes sense that I don't have any values. But you can see how in like a matter of, probably 10 minutes, I could have a whole table built for the whole year. Now, here's the real power of kind of one thing you were talking about, Stephen, is, okay, so let's say I have the whole calendar year and I'm tracking these metrics across multiple tables for 2024. What if someone came to you and said, this is interesting. How does this compare to 2022 for some random reason? What would you do? Well, in this case, it'd be pretty simple. I would just be able to come in here and say, okay, in 2022, how'd we do? Now I'm going to collect the data, and it's going to go run those metrics. In this case, we have a whole lot of incidents in this table. We got a few million incidents in this table. And so, but you can see right away, I could say, well, in 2022, this is how we did. I didn't have to go do much work. It took as long as the queries took. And because we're using aggregate functions here, considering that had to scroll millions of records and parse them into this, that actually didn't take that long.
Yeah, I'm thinking too, like, you did say this was a pretty simplistic example for the sake of the demonstration, but if you did have this sheet built out in kind of a more robust way that in some ways could say like, yeah, this could tell the data story for this month, that would mean that your monthly effort to go and spin up a new report would be adding a couple new cells and hitting collect data.
Yeah,
I think that is also really exciting because I know that folks are making reports at the end of the month is not always the easiest and most speedy task.
yeah.
Shoot, even at the end of the week or day,
Yeah, I mean, it makes those ad hoc requests pretty, just makes it a much easier task to be ready for, but it definitely makes that automated, the operational reporting process so much easier too, because it's just getting everything staged ahead of time. Okay, so we've went through kind of the 4 kind of demos that we were going to do. We do have some things. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the presentation. We have some things that we want to talk about what's coming up next, because we have told part of the story to this point.
Yep. Part of the story, again, of the data design and delivery kind of framework, the sheets is heavily amplified in the data column of that, or the data pillar. But yeah, the design and the delivery also turn into a superpower when you pair VividSheets with VividCharts. And so working on this right now, it's going to be coming really, really soon. So we wanted to at least share a prototype, a Figma prototype of what this would look like coming from using the data that you just built in your VividSheet and consuming it in VividCharts to draw really beautiful data visualizations.
Ready to unveil, Stephen?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's click over here.
Yeah, so for those that are not familiar with VividCharts, this is what we call our editor. This is basically the place where you get the canvas to write your story on, write your data story on. And so we can add charts and make visualizations and add custom shapes and add custom annotations and all of that good stuff. For the sake of this one, Gary, if you could go and add a new chart to this one. And so if you just give this a scroll, this is kind of what we were talking about before. This is our chart library and all of the charts that we have available kind of out of the VividCharts box. So all of these things are really good starting points to make really nice data visualizations. And so if you click on the vertical bar, we'll go through that example to show how we can make a bar chart from the data that we just created using VividSheets. So again, familiar for folks who have used VividCharts before, but selecting your data source, now there's this new item, VividSheets. So you can actually use that as a data source. Yep. And so there are just a few more things to define here before we get to draw our chart. The VividSheets name, obviously we have to go and reference which sheet we're going to go pull the data from. And again, in the spirit of trying to help guide you through this, we have little helper text here to go and guide you along the way. Yeah, so that's the table that's the one you just created. So let's select that one. After you select it, we'll be able to open that in a new tab, but for the sake of this one, we just saw that. But you can imagine if you're going to build this chart, then you would need to go and reference that cell or reference that sheet and be able to see which cells exactly you need to go and reference. So a category, that's going to take a cell range. That is just, yep, the categories of the bars that we're going to draw. We'll type that in there. And then the values are actually determining the height of the bars in this case. So for each of the available charts that we have that can use VividSheets as a data source, we'll give you some helpers to help understand exactly what needs to be defined in these fields. Yep, so let's click save on that one. We're using the sheet, and now we have this chart drawn using the data from our sheet. So again, this one's pretty neat because it is, again, 3 different tables all in one bar chart, which again is something that we hear often is, you know, a desire that wants to be made easier. And so once this is drawn to, it's not in this prototype, but this is where you can go in and customize the colors to make them match your brand or annotate them in certain ways, style the chart however you'd like. And there can be multiple charts on this slide. There can be multiple slides in this deck. This is really the flexible place for you to tell your data story however you need to.
And when I was selecting the data, I was giving a cell range for the values.
Yep.
So it's possible I could build multiple charts off of the same sheet, even using different values then from that same sheet, just by giving different ranges.
Yep. So there is a lot of flexibility in how you set up your sheet. You know, if you have in mind that you want to draw, you know, these different types of charts ultimately at the end, yeah, you can set up your Vivid sheet to kind of correlate to the actual output, the visual output that you anticipate. So this is the real cool superpower of joining Vivid Sheets and VividCharts together. Again, the data design and delivery, I think, is the pieces that we really believe deliver a lot of value. So that's the superpower. But at the top of the hour, Ashley also said that you don't necessarily have to have VividCharts to be able to use Vivid Sheets. And like Gary said too, if in one of those Vivid Sheets, you have the ability to share view access with anybody you'd like. So if the sheet is a proper format, you know, it works well enough for you, you can go and do that. And you can also export the data from your sheet to go and use in whichever data visualizers or visualization tools that you choose. The one drawback there is that, you know, as soon as you export, you know, the tie back to the ServiceNow data directly is broken. But again, that's one of the superpowers of using VividCharts to do this, is that everything is still connected. So in your Vivid chart view, if you needed to go refresh that data, you could do that with a single button and it would reach back through to your sheet and refresh that data as well. So those are a couple ways that you can consume it, but you know, Gary has even some more ideas to help spark your imagination.
Yeah, so again, we've really focused on the value of getting your metrics calculated, pulling in data, aggregating it, you know, staging. The terms we use are staging or preparing your data a lot. And one of the things that we've talked about a lot is, you know, kind of that spreadsheet UI experience and what that is like in order to help you create that familiar experience. One of the reasons why we like that is because we know that a lot of people are just familiar with the spreadsheet. And so we feel like it'll make it more accessible to more people in order to get that done. But we also want to inspire people to, get creative. And so one of the things that we do have documented in our knowledge base and have available is the VividSheets API. So right now, if one thing that you can do is you can use the API to go get ranges from a sheet of values, similar to how you saw we had implemented it in VividCharts. You can do something similar through the API and take that data someplace else, wherever you may be hitting that API. You can get cell values, and there's some other things here that I'll let you more inspired people to go read the documents and start digging through what's possible in the API. We do want to highlight this because we think there'll be some pretty interesting use cases. I do want to just kind of just to inspire you a little bit and give you an idea of what's possible. I do want to touch on this get range one to show you, a simple example of, what might be possible here. Okay. So I don't have this one pulled up. So I'm going to go here and going to load the sheet. Okay. So here's a sheet that I have. As Ashley mentioned, we're in Lexington, Kentucky. We're a Kentucky-based company. It is March of the year. And so March Madness is upon us. And so I was a little self-indulgent in this example. This is the roster for the University of Kentucky's basketball team this year, which is interesting. And some of the names I can't pronounce, but it's a set of data in a table that I was able to put in here. And so the question is, what could we do with that? Where could this go? Well, with the API, again, I can reach in, I could grab different ranges. So I wanted to use that API. I wanted to see what is possible using other tools that ServiceNow gives us. And so what I did here also was I went into the UI builder. I went into the next experience and built a custom workspace. So this is, again, you can see it's the roster of the UK Wildcats for this year. And this is data coming from that sheet. And it is pulled in to components that are available, when you're building your workspaces from ServiceNow. So just an example, again, that, we want to help people stage the data and then also enable them to use that data to be visualized inside of their workflows where they need and where it's optimal for their operational reporting. So again, a little bit of a self-indulgent example, but hopefully it shows you the possibility or what is possible.
Yeah, I think this is a really nice example of the data design and delivery. Really good delivery mechanism if a lot of people in the organization are hitting a workspace page. Totally still available to use your VividSheet data as a data source and push it around and visualize it however you need.
So with that, I'm going to go ahead and let's open it up for questions if we have any.
Yeah, let me see. I'm looking, waiting to see if there's any that come through. And if there aren't any, it looks like there aren't any in the comment section. If there are also questions, definitely feel free to reach out to Gary or I directly. We're happy to engage and answer any other questions, and really, really excited to see what kind of use cases folks are up to and how they can use this. We think it's going to be really, really valuable.
And just one final reminder that VividSheets is free to download. It's in the store.
go level up that data staging, data processing. Anything else, Gary?
I think we're good.
I think we'll call it there. Okay. Thank you all so
Excited to
much for
see-
joining.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.